Well, we're on. Welcome.
That's it. Good to go.
Let's do it. So, Karson, take us back. So, obviously, I know a fair bit about you, but yeah, for those that don't know much about you, take us back to sort of, how you started, what you did when you were younger, what got you here.
Yeah, so I guess going back to it, so I'm originally from North America, so I grew up in Canada, grew up in Toronto, just outside Toronto. For me, growing up, especially in North America, you finish high school, you go to uni. If you can't go to uni, you'll go to college. If you can't go into college, you go into a trade. So anybody growing up that had that grew up where education was important, you were always forced to go into uni. So started off doing uni back in Canada, doing exercise science and biomedical science. Was walking through the uni campus and I saw a sign saying do a 6-month exchange program to Australia. Looked at it, looked at the snow, 5 feet of snow outside, freezing cold in my winter jacket, and I'm like, stuff this, I'm going to go study in Australia. So worked everything out, did the exchange program, came out here. I was supposed to be here for 6 months originally. I think it was about a year program, just doing all like your accessory programs. Moved out here within the first week, fell in love with the country, fell in love with everything about it, the lifestyle, the weather, living beside the beach, training.
So Gold Coast was the first place.
Gold Coast was it, So I know, big from like just outside like rural Toronto. Literally, I left with like, I think it was like 10 feet of snow when I left. I came out here with like winter boots and a jacket. No idea what I was expecting, and literally just fell in love with it. And within the first week, so I started to go to Griffith University here on the Gold Coast. Met a good bunch of boys. We did again exercise science and biomedical science. And within about a couple of months, I transferred my entire degree out here. So decided this is where I wanted to live. But it was funny when I first moved here. Again, looking back, just about 10 years ago now, I literally moved here with $2,100 in my bank account and 2 suitcases. Had no idea what I was going to do. I mean, I did have some family support and stuff from back home if I ran out of money or whatever. But I was never somebody who would actually. If I put myself in a rough position, I'm not going to reach back out to back home. I need to figure it out myself. I've got a real small family back home, and so I wasn't leaving much. So moved out here within the first week, landed a pretty incredible job. I actually got a job in the nightclubs. So worked so brand new to Australia, and then get a job managing Sin City nightclub with an open drink account. So it actually worked out to be pretty fun. So I was hosting on the front door for a bit, doing some bottle service, and then. But I actually learned some incredible skills from it. The guys that own the nightclub, there's a group of older gentlemen that own a lot of the nightclubs here. And from day dot, they instilled in me looking at numbers. So I learned from an early age, it doesn't matter what you're selling, whether it's alcohol, door entry, teeth whitening, skin treatments, hormones, blood panels, whatever it may be, numbers don't lie, right? And so I would learn very quickly how to read the numbers from what the clubs were doing and how to make the business more profitable. And I've actually carried those skills into all the businesses that I have now. I've just recently opened up a little coffee shop in Brisbane City, a pet-friendly coffee shop, Dash Cafe.
Yeah, I've seen that. It's pretty cool.
And I mean, so going from numbers managing that nightclub into now selling coffee. It doesn't matter what we're selling, but we can look at times where things are sold and make the business as profitable as what we can. So, anyway, started at the nightclubs for a little bit, decided I was going to transfer my entire degree out here, finished my university out here, and then I actually got accepted to medical school. Now, at the time, so I got accepted to medical school at the University of Queensland. As an international student, medical school is $110,000 a year. So don't forget, 2 years before I moved here, $2,000 in my bank account. I maybe had $6,000 in my bank account now after working. And now I've got to pay $110,000 a year. So I looked at all the options that I couldn't figure it out. I looked at getting loans, and so I actually decided it wasn't going to be the best option for me to study here. Went back to Canada, and I actually got approached by a pharmaceutical company. So I started to work in the pharmaceutical industry in Canada as a medical science liaison for Bayer Pharmaceuticals. But I worked specifically in cardiovascular health. Worked in the stroke units through a couple of hospitals out there, and in the back of my mind, I mean, living on the Gold Coast, there's no better place that you can live. I always wanted to come back here. So then from there, I actually kept applying for transfers with the pharmaceutical company that I was in, and I eventually secured a transfer to a hospital in Sydney. So again, moved to Gold Coast for uni.
A little bit closer.
Yeah. Wasn't the Gold Coast, but I mean, it
Close
wasn't rural Canada back in the snow. So worked in Sydney for a little bit at the hospital sectors there, and I'll be honest, I just hated it. Hated everything about it. Where I was living in Sydney, the people at the hospital, other physicians, nurses, other staff that I was around. It just wasn't a good environment to be in. Now, I'm somebody who, like, I'm very motivated, right? I get up, I go to the gym every day. I mean, I'm in good shape, but I'm not a fitness model or anything like that. But I mean, I always eat pretty clean. And I started to notice, I had a girlfriend at the time in Sydney, and again, I don't really know what depression is for myself, but I would imagine this is what I was going through. So I stopped going to gym. I just didn't care about training. I was coming home fighting with my ex at the time all the time. Didn't want to go to work. Once I got to work, all I wanted to do was go home, and it was just a really toxic environment for me. So did that for probably about a year or two, and at this point, again, working in cardiovascular and the stroke unit, I started to realize kind of the backwards and twisted industry of the pharmaceutical industry and really of the medical industry as a whole. Where there's no patient-focused interaction. They don't care about the patients, they care about the profits, right?
Public system.
Yeah, and so I had a few things that happened which didn't really align with me. I mean, I've got pretty good core values and stuff, and I think after witnessing where patients could actually pass away from these medications, or they're not on the best medications for whatever the condition that they have are. But again, if that business is making money, the pharmaceutical industry is making money, they're happy with it.
Yeah, sure.
So I got there one day and I said, you know what? Stuff it, I'm done. I'm quitting. This day I'm done. So they gave me an option when I was working for this pharmaceutical company to take a severance package. And I said I can either move to a different therapeutic area or I can take this package. And at the time, I probably had, 10 grand in my bank account. The package was a good amount. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to take the package and I'm going to figure it out. Okay, so took the payout. Now I'm sitting at home, just studied for 12 years to get the role for me to just up and quit straight away. And like quit on the drop of a hat. And so the day that I quit the hospital, and I remember this clear as day, I've been getting laser hair removal for years. I've always taken good care of my skin, had skin treatments, and I've been getting laser hair. And I don't know if you've ever gone into like Australian skin clinics or any of these female skin clinics. You walk in there and there's always the most gorgeous girls that work there, right? So at this point I walk in, just quit the only career that I've ever had, the career that I just worked for 15 years to get to. And so I had my laser appointment. And I remember before I went to the laser appointment, I was sitting there and again going through that, what I thought was depression, not eating good. And I go, you know what, I'm going to go smash Hungry Jack's. Again, I don't really eat fast food, but I went and I got this big burger and chips and a Coke. And I'm sitting there eating this and I'm thinking in my head, I go, what have I just done? I just quit everything for what? And so I'm sitting there eating this burger. For Hungry Jack's, So I'm sitting there eating this burger and I'm like, fuck, I don't know what I'm going to do. And so anyways, I go into my laser hair appointment. And normally I would always go see the same girl. I guess she wasn't there that day. And I remember this blonde girl comes out, and again, being from Canada, you don't see the standard what girls are right here. This blonde walks out with big lips and fake boobs and long hair. And I'm looking, and she goes, okay, just go in the back room and you strip down to your jocks. And I'm thinking in my head, I go, fuck, I just had a massive burger and now this big hot blonde thing is going to do my laser. And I'm sitting there.
What have I done?
And I'm like, what have I done? So I go to get my laser treatment. And as I'm there, she goes, oh, so how's your day? And I look down. And again, I'm always in pretty good shape, but in my mental state of just leaving the hospital, depression, I'm looking down into my eyes. I've got this big gut. And so she goes, how's your day? And I'm sucking my gut. I'm like, yeah, my day's good. She goes, what are you up to do? I'm like, oh, yeah, not much. She's like, are you okay? Yeah, I'm all good, no worries. and so anyways, I finished that appointment, and I remember when I walked out, I felt so uncomfortable. And again, like, I train, I'm in decent shape, I take care of myself, and I, as an individual, I felt so uncomfortable leaving that clinic that I said, I'm never going to come back here again. And as I left, I got the idea, and I started thinking, I go, you know what, like, there's no ever, like, if you were in a footy changing with guys and you're taking your shirts off, there's no sexual tension in it. There's no, like, you're never checking out another guy's. Where in my head, I go to this laser and the girl's checking out my big Hungry Jack's belly. Yeah. And that's where the idea of crowned came about, where if it was a guy doing my laser, you're not gonna feel uncomfortable, right? You take your shirt off, go in your undies, it doesn't make a difference. Yeah. And that's where the idea came up, where if I had a men's only clinic, a clinic by men for men, then it takes all of that uncomfortable feeling about it, uncomfortable feeling away about those services that you get. Yeah. And that's where the idea for crowned actually came about. So
true. And so how long ago did this sort of happen?
So this started in about 2017, so about 5-6 years ago now. Yeah, right. Now I went and I opened up a clinic. I had a clinic that was doing something similar in Sydney. Had a partner for it, and long story short, we just didn't really see eye to eye in the way that we wanted the business to go. Yeah. Again, speaking kind of...
Did you learn a lot of lessons from that?
Mate, the lessons that I learned there, I think that the biggest thing is that I learned was the idea that I had for my brand, of what I wanted, the vision that I had for my clinic didn't align with what my partners were. Yeah, right. So my options were, I either sacrifice some of what I want for my brand and my business and align it with his, or we separate and I run my business on my own. Yeah. Which after a little bit, and again, the things that we aligned off or that we didn't align on, they weren't massive things, but it didn't match.
Plays effects though.
Yeah. 100%, and it just didn't match the vision that I had for my brand. So long story short, left there and I moved back to Queensland. So, and again, at this point, due to a few other things, visa issues and all of that, moved to Queensland, looked at starting my brand. And again, at this point, this is in about 2017, I think I had like 10 grand in my bank account. So I've given up everything, had this package that again, got all this money. What do you do when you're young? And bought a new car, going out partying, buying bottle service. And so anyways, moved back to the Gold Coast with barely any money in my pocket. And I said, you know what, the skills that I've learned, the services and the treatments and everything that's gotten me to this point, I know that this business will be successful. And at the end of the day, it's not that the business will be successful, it's that I'm passionate about it.
Massive one.
Leaving the hospital where there was no passion, it wasn't patient-focused interactions, it was transactional business. I knew that for myself, I didn't want to have a transactional business, which kind of brings me to where we are today, where all the patients that come into my clinics, whether it's for skin treatment, facials, teeth whitening, to get their blood checks, even get a haircut from our barbers, every single patient leaves my clinic feeling better about themselves. Right? So I took the focusing on the transaction out of it and started to care about the patients, and because of that, the money came after, right? By providing the service and the care and the passion, the money followed suit. Whereas again, from some of the business that we had before, it was all transactional. Worry about the money, the higher our margins are, the better. Who cares about the service or what the patient or
reputation?
The reputation, it's all about the money. Where I didn't want that vision for the business. We genuinely care about our patients. That's why we've been able to grow into something so incredible. Every single person that comes into our door, they walk out feeling better about themselves. And that's regardless of what service that we got. What service that they got.
How long ago did you start Crown now?
So Crown itself was, I think, about 2017, 2018. We started off subletting a shop in Hope Island. So I had like a little one room studio out of a female eyelash clinic. So girls were coming in getting their eyelashes done as guys were coming in to get the facials. But again, the branding and the marketing that I did on social media, we marketed it as like a men's only clinic. It just happened we had a men's only room inside the girls' eyelash studio. But again, keeping the vision where at some point I always knew I was going to have a men's only clinic. It was just the stepping stones to get there.
100%.
So I had that one room studio. Then from there, branched out where we rented half of a tattoo studio. So again, although the tattoo studio is male and females, guys that are getting tattoos, and it kind of aligned more with with our brand.
Clinic,
had some issues with kind of the business partners and stuff there, and then that's when we went and opened up our first clinic, which was in the heart of Broadbeach. Now, again, that clinic, I'm very fortunate for the team that I've had around me. There's no question that the support system that I had from my staff and my managers and my team.
Staffing's so important. No matter what business it is, it's so important.
Man, like I'm just very fortunate that I've had staff that have been with me for 2 weeks and don't make it, and I've had staff that have been with me for 6-7 years from day dot.
Yeah.
Right. And again, I think when you find staff that add value to the business, but pardon my language, but staff that actually fucking care, right?
Yeah.
People that aren't just here for the 9 to 5. I
Yeah.
always use the example of the checkout chick at Woolies, right? Do you think the checkout chick cares how quickly she scans the groceries? She doesn't care. She's getting her hourly wage. She doesn't mind, right?
Yeah.
Whereas my staff, the ones that last, are the ones that genuinely care about the business. They care about the patients. They care about the service that they're giving, which kind of ties into the whole, I guess, men's health space and men's mental health space, because a lot of guys, and I'm kind of rambling here as we go, but as you come in for a service, a lot of guys, when they come into the clinic, they don't feel comfortable about themselves, right? You're coming into the clinic to take care of your skin or to get your hormones in check, you feel your teeth are yellow, so you want to get your teeth in. They're coming in with some sort of insecurity, right? So now if my staff are just focused on that transaction, right? That client's going to walk out feeling like they've just been sold to, which is not what I wanted, right? Which is not what I want. And because of that, when guys coming in with certain insecurities, and any of my staff can relate to this, any guy, right? If a guy's going through some sort of depression, or even, myself, when I thought I was depressed, some sort of like mental condition or some sort of stress. If you ask any male in and around our age demographic if they'll go see a therapist, 9 out of 10 are going to say no way, right? But what happens when a guy goes into the barber shop? A guy goes and sits down for a barber to get a haircut. The barber goes, "Oh, how's your day?" And the guy goes, "Oh, fuck, man, I'm punching out with my missus. My kids suck, we're arguing all the time." And guys open up.
Yeah, it's like a form of therapy.
Emotion.
Right? It's they let out that emotion. As soon as there's, as well with a barber, they start cutting your hair. They're putting their hands on you. As soon as there's that physical touch, guys have the tendency to open up, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And guys generally will open up in a space where it's just guys.
Yeah.
And that's why my clinic, between the 30, 40 staff that we've got, they're all male staff. I have 2 female receptionists. So myself and all my staff can relate to what that male is going through.
Yeah, super important.
And I guess that as well ties into where we're going with the business, is being able to give back to men that are struggling with mental health or depression, suicide, and stuff like that.
Yeah, super important. And so when you first started Crown, I guess if we can go into a bit of the business side. So obviously, you said you started off in a small room within a sort of female studio, tattoo shop and that sort of stuff. What sort of changed in terms of, like you said, you had that vision from the start. How's the sort of business side of it changed? Obviously, in that small one room, you weren't offering all the services you offer now. How has that sort of changed over time? And I guess, why has that changed? And sort of, what's that sort of all look like?
Yeah. So I guess the biggest change for us is moving out of when we were subletting out of the tattoo shop to our own clinic, right? And again, talking about the support system that I had, I've got a few mates that are chippies and builders, and again, through the 8 shops that I built over the past 5 years, we use the exact same Sparkies, the exact same chippies, the exact same. They've been with us through the entire journey. Yeah. And I always talk back to it where you kind of you are the circle that you keep, right? Yeah. And I use this best example. I've got a really close mate, and when I was building my first shop, to do a fit out of an entire 2 treatment room, I think it was like an 80 square meter clinic, I had 15 grand to do this fit out. Yeah. And I said to the builder, I go, "This is every penny to my name." Yeah. I go, "I'm happy to put everything down, but I can't spend $1 more than that. Can you make it work?" And he goes, "You know what? Yeah." He goes, "We'll make it work." Right? Yeah, he goes, cool. I'll work with you and I'll make it work. But I remember this clear as day, where we were building the shop and we were laying the floors, and I'm not scared to say I don't know a hammer from a nail. It's not me. I spent 14 years in a library studying. I'm not trade savvy. I couldn't build something. I hire somebody to build a flat pack.
I'm much the same.
Well, it's not me. But I remember I had this one friend, and this friend, he's worth $50 million. He's the most humble, down-to-earth guy. You'll never see him anything other than like an Adidas tracksuit, and like he's very low-key, he's very humble.
I like that.
And honestly, and he's always got a little bum bag. And I remember we're laying the floors. He's a bit older, and we're laying the floors of the shop. And he came to check out the shop just as a mate, right? Yeah. And this goes back to you are the circle that you keep, right? Of who your friends are, who you surround yourself with.
So important.
Man, so... And I remember he comes to the shop and he's looking there and he's looking at the floors, and he's sitting there, and I say, I'm like, what do you think? He goes, I don't like the angle that floor's going on. And I go, I think it looks all right. And he looks at it, and don't forget, this guy's worth, I think, $50 to $100 million. Like, this guy is successful, right? And he's looking at it as he's got his bum bag and his tracksuit, and he's looking at it and he goes, nah, fuck it. He looks at the builder, he goes, stand up. And he takes his bum bag off, and he's on his hands and knees, pulling the floor tiles up, laying the floors up. Don't forget, this guy has more money in the world. Wouldn't have to do anything. But because it was my shop, he wanted to genuinely help me. He knows I don't know the angles of the floor and stuff like that. And that's what engraved in me from that point, where when you surround yourself with quality people, right? And whether it's staff, whether it's your friend group, whether it's people you look up to, when you're around quality people and people that want to push you forward, there's going to be nothing that holds you back.
Yeah, 100%.
Right?
Super important.
Also ties into the whole like partying on the weekend and what you do with your weekends, what you do when no one's watching and stuff like that. But that was one I guess thing that happened to me where I sat back and I looked and I go, this guy has all the money in the world, but he's happy to be on his hands and knees at 9 p.m. on a Saturday night laying my flooring because it's going to help me out. How can I give that back to the next person? And the only way that I could think is by putting that energy back into the services that we give at the shop. So originally we started off doing teeth whitening, skin treatments, cosmetic injectables, and barber services. Yeah. Right? So we wanted to... The main focus for us was to masculinize what were previously known as female treatments. I use this example a lot. Could you ever imagine your father? I mean, we're all around the same age group here, but could you imagine your father or your grandfather going to get a facial? There's no way. They'd look at you and be like, what are you, buff? You're going to go get a facial? Like, but nowadays, our demographic, it's very common for guys to take care of themselves. And could you imagine when we have sons or when we have children, it's going to be second nature for them. So we wanted to create that safe space for men to feel comfortable to get these treatments that were formerly known as feminine treatments, but to get it done in an area that's cool and that's exciting to be about.
And even just that environment. Like, if I had like a skin problem, I'm not going to like just rock up to this pink building with pink signs and there's 10 hot chicks in there. I'm like, hey, I just...
straight away you feel uncomfortable.
And I don't even know what to say, like having some issues with my face. And it's just a real intimidating thing.
And that kind of spurred out where, I mean, if you look if you look on our social medias, most of my staff are covered in tattoos, which again is pretty common on the coast anyways, but all my staff train, they take care of themselves. They all have partners and most of their girlfriends are all incredible people as well that push them forward. But when your average bloke can see this big, tatted up, muscly looking guy who's in shape, who looks staunch, but if you can see him getting a facial, then why can't they? Right?
Yeah, 100%.
It takes that stigma out of it being a treatment that's only for females. Now from that, again, the business did really well for the first few years. Again, I've got a manager who's been with me since day dot from the business side of it, and we did really well for a few years. But the growth phase of any business is what really kind of tested me, I guess. Going from one shop to 3 shops, I mean that's a different thing. That was the biggest struggle in the world. I'm very pedantic on the way that services are done, but the way that clients are treated when they come to the shop. And all of a sudden you start opening new shops, or you look at franchising new shops, and you start to lose more and more of the intellectual property. 100%. Right? And so that's where I think, coming back to the staffing side, where I had to take myself off of doing treatments and look at more motivating and pushing my staff to be the best version. Exactly. And not so much managing as micromanaging people. And that was the biggest struggle of being able to keep my staff motivated and passionate even when I'm not there. I use this example at my coffee shop. I mean, I'm very fortunate my coffee shop, I don't need to step foot in it. I mean, even some of the staff, I don't even know. I've got a partner who runs a lot of it. But you always see it when I walk into the coffee shop. The girls will be doing their normal thing, and then I walk in, and then all of a sudden they start wiping things down, and they start panicking, oh shit, the boss is here. And you can always tell that. But again, I don't want staff to act like that. I want you to do that at all times, right? How do you motivate people to do that? And I guess coming back to the whole business side of it, like, before I opened this, I didn't know what I was doing, right? Like, I started managing nightclubs. I mean, I've always had a passion for medicine and science and patients, but the business side of it, I mean, that's a
completely different ballgame.
Man, completely different. And then the aspects of business where you look at the accounting side, you look at the marketing side, like, I could get any patient in here and give them the best service and the best treatment, right? But then me seeing patients, the business doesn't grow. So do you stay stagnant and give the best service, or do you look at employing people and growing the brand? And I think that was the hardest part for me, is growing the brand into what it was today, being able to motivate staff and motivate people to actually want to be here, and for lack of a better word, for them to actually want to give a fuck, right? 100%. Because it's so easy for someone to come in, do their 9 to 5 and go home, which that's not what we have here. All my staff want to be here.
That's good. I suppose we've touched on, I guess, the business side and what you're sort of focusing on now. So once you go home, what's sort of the life look like for you? Like, I know you obviously train, you look after yourself, but I sort of look at, success isn't just sort of making money. It's also your pillars of, like, your family, your relationships with, a spouse or friends, and your training and all that sort of stuff. What's your focus? So once you leave here, I guess, because it's your business, you obviously got to focus it on it a little bit. But what are your other, I guess, priorities once you sort of go home? What do you focus on? And so I think for myself, and we have engraved these into the crowned pillars as well, which I guess the crowned tagline is, you look good, you feel good, you do good, right? Nowadays, when we look at, again, 10, 15 years ago, the way you looked didn't really matter. Now, people are very judgmental. You go into an interview.
Social media is a big problem with that.
100%. And again, I mean, I use this example to everyone. When you go to the barber and you get a fresh cut, you walk out, you feel good. Or, you got a hot date on a Friday night, you go and buy a new t-shirt and you look good, it fits good, and you feel good, right? So that's something that with all my staff, our clients, our patients, that we engrave for your everyday life. From that, the 3 pillars that Crown is based off of is health, wealth, and relationships. So speaking of the first one, health. Now, health can be going to train, do you eat, it can be your mental health. There's a few different aspects of that. One thing that has always been super important to myself is the gym. Is fitness, some sort of physical activity. Everything can be going wrong in your life, right? Looking at myself, I've just quit my job, I've lost a job, I've lost a missus, me and my partner are fighting, I'm eating shit, but what's there? The gym is always there. You can always go to the gym. This is an outlet, and you know what? 45 minutes to an hour, put your headphones in, you zone out, you go and train, and you
really change your mindset. Just one hard session.
Exactly, and I mean, I guess the example, one session isn't going to change your body, but you compound it. You have a couple not so good sessions, you have a couple really good sessions, you add that up over 6 months and you're making progress into your physical ability. So that's one thing in terms of health. The next thing on health is your mental health, right? So for me personally, I actually go see a psych regularly. I went through a real bad breakup a few years ago where again, males, when they go through a breakup, males take it hard, right? It doesn't matter who you are. And I was in a bit of a bad place. I didn't really know where to go, what to do. And so I went and saw this psych, and they just helped me unpack some of the emotions and the things that I was going through. Now, I'm confident. I'm a very mentally resilient person. I'm very mentally strong. I still go see a psych, but now it's getting away from relationships and more for performance health. Knowing how I can best motivate my staff, how I can best promote the brand that we're doing, but doing it in a way that I'm confident in myself and what I'm putting out there, if that makes sense. And then the second aspect to health is actually our internal health. So I mean, gym's good. I mean, you physically look better. It's going to help internally as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Your mental health. But I think the most important is, which is where the brand has started to go into, is your actual internal health. So most recently, we've just opened up Crown Performance Health Clinic. We're out of the clinic now. We do all in-house blood tests.
Yeah.
And we would be probably the largest prescribers of men's health in Australia. So for prescription management.
Yeah.
And as males, a lot of people don't know this. Our hormones and what's going on in our body are very black and white.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You may feel great. You may feel absolutely shit. But our blood panels don't lie. It's very black and white.
Yeah.
We can see what's going on. Obviously, there's a bit of scrutiny around what you've eaten and if you had a big weekend of drinking and stuff like that. So some numbers can play. But overall, if you're not doing a regular blood check, you're not regularly checking on what's going on internally in your body, how do you know how your body's running? Right?
Yeah, 100%.
It's the same as like driving a car, right? You have to get the oil changed in your car every so often. Why are we not doing that for our bodies?
Yeah.
And so that's where the clinic has got to now, where for somebody like myself, health has always been important, training, fitness, but more importantly ever than before, is getting our blood panel checked, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I personally do my bloods every 4 weeks. Because it's very easy to do. I mean, we can do them directly out of the clinic.
Yeah.
Most patients that we have, we recommend every 3 months at a minimum.
Yeah.
Because if anything ever were to go bad, if you were to get liver toxicity or fatty acid liver disease or renal impairment, generally that's not something that's going to happen immediately. It's not going to happen overnight unless there's an underlying issue.
Yeah.
We can start to see signals. Your liver enzymes will start to get high. You'll start to get impaired, slightly impaired renal function. It'll happen slowly over time. Again, there always is anomalies and patients that have diseases and things. But if you're regularly checking your bloods, early detection is the best prevention for any condition that there is.
Yeah, I've actually started doing my bloods more. I hadn't had a blood test in probably like 4 years, and then about a year ago I started doing the same thing because I was like looking after my health, trying to train, and then I was like, fuck, what if, just thinking about sort of 10, 15 years in the future, not that I was sort of like thinking negatively about in terms of like cancer and all that sort of stuff, but I was like, fuck, imagine if I'm looking after myself so much now, and then in 10 years time I've sort of been neglecting this thing and it's just been slowly sort of building up. So yeah, I did the exact same thing. I'm like, all right, now every like 3 to 6 months, blood test, get it all checked out. And yeah, it's really trying to focus on that now as well. It's so important. And
it goes back to that same thing where you go ask your father or you go ask your grandfather when their last blood check was, right? Mate, I mean, especially Aussie blokes, mate, I'm alright, I don't need to worry about it.
Have another beer.
Yeah, have another beer, have a VB, I'm not sick, no worries. Where nowadays, it's that easy to take control of your own health. Obviously, there is some issues in here in Australia with the private and public health sector and the way medicine's going. So, I mean, obviously you have to pay for certain things in private healthcare systems, but how do you put a price on your health? Right? And by you pushing your blood test to the side, by you not being proactive about your health, you're doing yourself a disjustice, right? I mean, by all means, we might do your blood test and everything comes back perfect, but it gives you the peace of mind, right? Now all of a sudden something goes wrong, you start feeling sick, internally your bloods are fine. It might just be the common cold, you might just have a flu or something like that. Whereas if you don't know what's going on internally of your body, you could have a disease and would never even know it until you get that blood check.
I literally only did my bloods last week and I found out that my liver was, the levels were too high or something, so I'm on medication for that now, and I didn't know that was only last week.
See,
and you would never know.
You would never know. And again, like a lot of times, like,
and I'm not a big drinker or anything as well.
I mean, even things like, I'll be the first to say, I'm in good shape. I mean, I train an hour to 2 hours every day. My diet's okay. I mean, I don't eat the best. I've got high cholesterol. But that's not from training. That's a genetic disposition that's been passed down from my family, right? You're not going to know. I mean, I've felt great for years. Now in my most recent blood test, my cholesterol is getting higher, but my diet's getting better. So I've had to put myself on a cholesterol medication, on a statin to help decrease that. If your cholesterol stays high for a long period of time, you're going to run yourself a risk of cardiovascular disease, pre-heart attack, strokes. It's not a good thing. But again, by being proactive about our health care, and getting your body in its best position, that's going to help every other aspect of your life, 100%. Right? And tying that quickly back into the clinic, where we have patient-focused interactions. If a client comes in, they're paying for my time to come in here. It's not a public system where they're coming in, they walk in the door, yep, sweet, take this script, I'll see you in 2 weeks. That's not what we do here. We look at what that patient's goals are, what their lifestyle is like, what their home life is like, what their stress levels are like, their career, if they've got a sedentary job, if they're on the tools every day. And we look at their blood panel and look at how we can better optimize the way that their body works and functions to fit in what their goals are. So if a patient comes to me and says, look, I want to lose 15 kilos, well, your body might not be in its best position on your blood panel. Let's get you in the best position to do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
So again, just touching base on that in terms of health, looking at your physical health, gym, looking at your mental health, taking care of that. Again, whether you do meditation, breath work, men's groups, seeing somebody. But then the most important, I think, which is something that I've really taken on and my team at Crown have, is your internal health as well. And actually looking at how to better optimize the way that your body works and functions.
That's awesome.
So that's the health pillar. Second pillar is wealth. Now, wealth can be a few things. It's not just necessarily money in the bank. It's what that can bring you, right? So I don't always necessarily look at wealth as the financial wealth, but as it's given me the time to actually increase my free time, right? Now, I mean, the first 2-3 years of opening Crown, if a patient called me at 9 p.m. and wanted to get their teeth whitening, I was coming into the clinic, right? I eat, breathed, slept, Crown aesthetics, right? There was nights I slept in the clinic because I had patients till 11 p.m. and my next one was at 6. I go, I'm not going to go home. I'll just sleep in the clinic and do the patient the next day, right?
That's sick.
I did the hard yards, and I'm very fortunate. My manager, who's been with me for years, he's done the hard yards as well, right? If I wasn't going to be there at night, he had to be there as well. So I did that for years to be able to get myself in a position now where I work very hard. Don't get me wrong. I'm in the clinic every day, but now I'm at a point where I can
step back a little bit.
And I can take. I went on a holiday a couple years last year for 8 weeks, right? And I didn't have to second guess that holiday. I knew my clinic was going to run. I knew my staff knew what they need to do. We put the systems into place to know that everything's going to run. Of course, nothing runs as exactly how I want it when I'm not here. But I mean, it goes well enough that I don't need to stress about it. So the wealth side, it's not necessarily the money that the business is bringing in, but what that money can actually give me is having that freedom.
For sure.
Right? So having that free time to be able to go on those holidays too. I mean, it's little examples. The other day, I had a busy day and my missus goes, look, I need some things from IKEA. I go, she goes, me and you, and my missus, what she says goes. So she goes, we're going to IKEA, I need to get this. And I'm like, well, if I had a 9 to 5, if I was that chick at Woolies, I can't miss a day to take it to IKEA. So, I mean, even just little things like that, where yesterday we had to go meet a builder at one of the rental properties to build a deck. Like, for me to take a couple hours off and be able to go have those meetings, man, you can't put a price on that. So,
100%.
And I understand, I mean, working a 9 to 5, no one wants to do it, but it's the steps that you have to take. When I worked at the nightclubs, I worked 9 till 3, but I worked 9 p.m. till 3 a.m. every single day. I worked 6 days a week for 5 years. That was my schedule, right? And looking back on it now, no one wants to work those nights. If I couldn't leave that business, I had to be there from 9 p.m. till 3 a.m. Whereas now, I put those hard yards in so that now I can take a bit of a step back.
I think that, especially now, a lot of people, like I'm sort of in the middle of that process now. Like I'm doing 12 to 16 hour days, 7 days a week. Like I'm in the grind at the moment. A lot of people, they sort of, whereas like, because I've only been doing this for a couple of years. At the start, that's all you really have. You don't have like this knowledge to leverage. You don't have, the network to leverage. All you have is hard work. Like you only have time and you can only work hard. I think a lot of people, particularly in this next generation, they think, and they're trying to sort of,
take the
make a
easy
quick
way.
dollar. They can do an e-com course here, and they can, they'll make a few bucks here, make a few bucks here, make a few bucks here. There's not really too many people, if you look into it closely, that are willing to sort of put in those hard yards, put in that work, that are going to be like, all right, I'm going to sacrifice sort of, this part of my life and this sleep and all these sort of things in order to sort of build the skills and all that sort of stuff in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years time. I think that's super common now.
I did the exact same thing you were saying about you slept in because you had a client the next morning. I was sort of similar. When I first started, I was renovating houses. I was an electrician apprentice, and I start work at, say 5:30, 6 o'clock I started work. And I remember when I was renovating these places, I was doing it all myself. I'd be up till 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning painting and just crash on the floor and get up in a few hours and go to work. The same sort of shit. You just like people just. I guess if you put in those hard years where you do those grind, it always pays off. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I mean even from that, like from what I just said, I mean I have the freedom where I can take time off.
Yeah.
But I think it comes down to like when you find your thing, when you find your passion. Like I'm sure for Jaden with videos and what you're doing, like for me, I'll be honest, I don't work. Right?
Yeah.
None of this is work, man. If I need to be here Saturday, and I've got clients, like my days don't change. There's 7 days in a week. Every single day for me is the exact same. My life doesn't change.
Yeah, I'm the exact same.
And the thing is, and I say this to everybody, I'll be honest, I have stressful days. I have days where we make big money. I have days where we make no money. I have days where there's issues in the shop, issues at home. But I don't actually work. I love what I do. Right? I've found my passion, which is giving back to men, helping men be the best versions of themselves. And the way that we're doing it is by getting them looking and feeling their best so that they can go out and do their best. Right? When I have a client that walks through my door feeling shit about their teeth are white, their skin's not good, or I have a guy that comes in, and it's very common. We do a blood test on a guy, and a middle-aged male who's about to go through a divorce because he can't get an erection anymore, and it's starting to cause marital issues, and he doesn't know what's going on, and now because of that he's got no energy, he's no tired, he's fighting with his missus. And I look at his blood panel and we can see this patient is deficient in testosterone. They've got low testosterone fatigue syndrome or testosterone deficiency, and it is a blanket black and white prescription management to be able to help that patient. And that patient comes back to me 3 weeks later saying they're not looking at getting divorced. Their relationship is the best they've ever been. They feel better. They look better. They've got more energy. They're doing better work than what they ever have done. Like, how can that be work for me, right? That is the most
100%.
rewarding feeling in the world.
100%.
And yeah, I mean, I'm just fortunate enough where I did the hard yards. Nobody wants to be at work for 20 hours a day. But doing those hard yards in something that you like to do makes it so much easier.
Yeah,
And
100%.
I can resonate with you a lot. My missus has some family that are looking at the easy way out, and they're trying to get that next quick thing. They're trying to make that next quick dollar to get onto that next thing. And do you know what? There is some success stories. There is some patients. Sorry, not some patients. There is some people that have made some big money and then moved on to the next thing. But when I look at myself, by no means do I see myself successful, but by any means, because there's so much room to constantly grow. Right? The hard yards never really stop. They just change on a different scale.
The problems change too.
Oh man, and the problems change now. And,
Yeah.
and speaking what you said before, staffing, man, that is the biggest issue in the world, right? Finding people that have the same drive and motivation.
Well, the thing is, they're never going to match that because, like, obviously, this is your passion. This may not be their passion, but some people, that's I guess how you single them out. Whereas, like, some people just come to the job for their hourly pay and they go home. So, like, that's the staff that you don't really hang around. That's the ones that don't hang around too long.
But on that note as well, I mean, it's funny. So, and this is something that I've grown, and again, the circle that I've been have been able to educate me, because I mean, leading up to this, I managed staff before at the nightclub. I managed 40, 50 staff at a time, but I never employed them. So I mean, I was still just getting my wage. So the staff doesn't show up, whatever. It's not really a stress for me. Where now you start to realize there's lots of different roles for different people, right? I'll be honest, I've got staff that don't give a shit about the business. They're a 9 to 5, but I need somebody like that in that role. Like cleaners, right? The cleaners have to do a really good job, but I'm not going to expect them to come clean at all hours of the night. They've got their set roles. Some of my other staff, where they're just not passionate about it, but there is room for people like that in the business, right? Maybe their passion isn't this. Maybe they go home and their passion's gaming and they want to game all night, or their passion's reading or art, right? That's one thing where I was only looking for people that wanted to have the same drive as me, whereas of recently I've switched my mindset a little bit, and I look at where people are able to be coached, right? How can I make that person be the best version of themselves in their role? Does that make sense?
100%.
So anyways, that's the last pillar. And then I guess the third pillar for me, which, so again, talking about the three, was health, wealth, we just spoke about, and then relationships. talking about relationships for myself, I don't have a big family. I don't have a close family whatsoever. So I mean, moving out here to Australia, I moved out here with myself, right?
Yeah.
And never really looked back. I got some family back home. We're not close. We don't really speak that much.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things that I found about relationships, there's two aspects. One is your home life, so whether it's your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your partner, whatever that may be, and then your friendship circle as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So talk about your friendship circle first. I had groups of friends that were going out, getting on benders every weekend, and what do? You slot into what your friends do,
100%.
right? So it's that standard quote, but you are the company that you keep, right?
Yeah.
You show me your 5 closest friends and I'll show you what your future looks like.
Yeah.
Right? And from that, I had friends that were partying every week and doing that, and I've had friends that run $100 million companies. But we all look at that, and there's a group of my friends that were doing whatever they were doing on the weekends, and they've realized that as well, and we've all kind of made that change together.
That's
right?
good.
Yeah.
And so not only did we stay mates, but we've all grown as individuals. And I mean, as we're getting older, right, we're now looking at the stage where I want to have kids and I want to have a family, and what's the legacy or what's the impression that you want to give on to your children, right?
Yeah.
And when you sit back and you look at it from there, it makes you want to do better and it makes you want to work harder,
100%.
right? And I guess there's that one quote that I always joke around with my receptionist, but when you want to do the best, it's hard to soar like an eagle when you're surrounded by a flock of turkeys, right?
Yeah.
And I always joke about that quote, but it's true.
Oh,
when
so
you're
true.
hanging around toxic people, you're just going to pull yourself down,
Yeah, 100%.
right? So you need to be around a group that motivates you, that pushes you forward. Now, I mean, I call my best mate 15 times a day. We'll call in, and it's funny because we always call on FaceTime.
Yeah.
But you'll call and you'll be like, oh man, did you see this new investment property? Have you looked at that? Oh man, have you heard about the new release in the federal budget? 5 years ago, I was talking about like,
That's not part of the
I'm like
conversation.
5 years ago, I'm like, oh, did you get that carton of cruisers? Let's sell it this weekend, bro.
I
Like,
noticed that. I read for the first time the other week. I read like the notes of the federal budget like meeting, and then I think did I call you
Yeah,
or
it was me.
I called him, and I was like, we're talking about the exact same thing. I've gone searched for the notes because I like missed it, looking for the notes of the federal budget meeting. Like so strange.
It's funny how the conversation changes when your passions or your drives in a different direction than what it was a few years ago.
Yeah, and it's so
talking
important
about where
to
the
me.
property market's going to go and this and that, you know what I mean?
And from that as well, I think like you now realize that you're doing it, and I sit back once. One of the coolest things for me is I drive by this clinic. So Mermaid Beach being our head office, I drive by it at night. I don't know if you've ever seen our sign. I'm sure you
it's
can
good.
put a video in this clip or whatever. But it glows, and we've got this big, massive shop outside. And I drive by probably once a week, and I just kind of slow down in front. And I look and I go, shit, that's mine. I've done that. And I think it's important that everybody sits back and looks and reevaluate, look where you came from, right?
Yeah,
5 years ago, 6 years ago, I could have never imagined that I'm in this place where I am now.
Yeah,
and now I'm
100%.
only thinking, where am I going to be in 5 years, right? Like, I think it's very important that you evaluate where you've come from and look at the progress that you've made. And if you feel like you're not making the progress that you want, that's where you reevaluate your friend group and your circle group
100%.
and choose the people that you want to be around with wisely.
100%. Even on that, like, so I did the same thing. Like, look, I sometimes forget to sort of stop and smell the roses and look back and be like, you know, if I had to see myself in 5 years ago, if I could see myself now, what I'm doing with myself, I'd be so proud. But you sort of like get stuck in this rut.
Yeah.
And also another thing, I think it was Drake. I saw him a reel on Instagram about realizing that it's not so much about the destination, like it's about like it's happening. And he just the way he worded it, it's like it's happening right now. Like, so everyone's caught up in this, you know, what's happening in the future, 5-10 years I want to be here. But you've got to sort of boil it back to like right now, you've got to enjoy the journey and realize like that's all happening now, and you've got to make sure you're putting in sort of like the foundations for that to happen then. And just stop. Yeah, it's good to sort of focus on the end goal, but you've got to realize it's all happening now, and you can sort of be like, all right, I want to be here in 10 years. I need to start doing this now, and then enjoy that process, and then you will get there.
Yeah, and I think that comes around with like now more than ever. There's so much like help available online. There's so many bro, and you go online and anybody is giving you advice on journaling and goal setting and And when it's pushed in everyone's face so much, people start to wash it and push it aside. They don't really care about it. But that's one thing that I think super important is setting yourself goals, smart goals that are achievable, that are realistic, but small goals and big goals as well.
That's one thing that I'm big on as well. Is like every year I make sure I set my goals for the year, but then I also break those down too. Like let's say my goal was to make $1 million with this company, whatever it might be. I break that down. Like I need to be able to do this many cars this week, or make this much profit, and you break it down to achievable things. So it's not this big picture. So many people when we had Chris on, he was saying that so many people say, I want to lose 20 kilos. It's like, that's a big number. It's too confronting, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, all right, you need to have this many calories a week. Like you know what I mean? You break it down to make it achievable.
100%. Yeah, and I think talking back to when I went back on the pillars of relationships, of the circle you keep, and then like your home life, your partner, I think that it's very important to have a clear separation of individual goals for your business, goals for yourself, your personal fitness, but relationship goals as well, right? Partner goals. I mean, I'm super fortunate. I went through, I mean, I've had a couple long-term relationships, and I've had some real bad breakups and courts and things just like I've had some bad luck. And I'm very fortunate now that I have the most incredible partner where when I've got a bad day, I'm coming home and I know that my day is going to be better. She's pushing me to do more, to make my life easier, supportive. Yeah, but then in turn of that, like, and a lot of times males get caught up so much of focusing on themselves, like, what are we doing to support our partners as well? Because it's one thing to bring home all of this money and let them go shopping and give them what they want and buy them a new purse, one thing, but they have their individual goals as well, right? So 100%. If my goal is to get this business to turn over $4 million this year, and I'm working everything towards that, well, maybe my partner's goal is to attend 15 gym classes in a month, right? My goal is not more important than what hers is, right? There are our own individual goals and our own individual scales, but how can I help push her to reach her?
If she's helping you got to give back.
Exactly. It goes both ways, and I think that comes to where some of my relationships in past that weren't successful, I was too focused on my individual goals, right? I was somebody who I didn't care about what my partner was doing. If you're not making my life easier, I don't care. Don't be around there. Where it's kind of that younger or that childish mindset where it does take two parties to it takes both of you have to be able to give and take and that was something that I don't think I was willing to do, which is why my relationship with my partner now is incredible, and I mean she used to own business and stuff. She doesn't run a business, she just works her career, but that's no more important than me managing 50 staff, right? That's still something that's very important to her. And because of that, it's important to myself as well. I think it's very important to always evaluate your own goals, your goals as a couple, but then your partner's goals as well, and having that open form of communication to know how you can, I guess, push each other to be the best versions, right?
That's cool.
Yeah, for sure.
One thing you're saying is that you're kind of looking at potentially having kids in the future. For me, I've got two young ones. For me, like they're my purpose, and they're my drive. What would you say your drive and your purpose is?
Yeah, so good question. So I don't have children yet. I was with a partner a few years ago that I've always loved kids. Right? My best mate has a little daughter. The second that she's in the room, I don't care about anybody else. I want to be around that little baby. And watching her grow up is the most incredible thing in the world. And it's not even my baby. Right? I've always wanted to have kids, but I had a partner a few years ago that was dead set, did not want kids. And my mindset over the years of being with them, I started to think, you know what, kids probably aren't that good. You know what I mean? I probably don't want kids, right? Maybe when I'm 50, I can go travel rather than having to go to my kids'
It almost goes back to what you're saying, the people you hang around. Isn't that stuff ingrained into you? Whether they be benders or it might be them not wanting kids, but if you're spending that time, it's going over.
100%. And I started, I'll be honest, I started to switch mine where I go, you know what, I don't think I want kids anymore. And the second that relationship broke down, I stepped away from it. Man, I've wanted kids my entire life. And my new partner, she is the most maternal thing in the world. She's got some young nieces and nephews. She will be the best mom. And so for myself, when I look at what my drive is and what my why is, I didn't have a real good home life back in Canada, right, growing up. And so everything that I'm doing now, working the long hours, growing the business, growing the brand, surrounding myself with good people is so that when I do have kids, they can have the life that I deserved when I was a child, right?
That's a good way.
I think the biggest thing, and I always love sport, right? It doesn't matter what sport. I grew up playing gridiron and ice hockey in Canada, but like obviously footy and cricket, whatever it is. Yeah. I don't care what sport my kids go to. I don't ever want to miss a sport game, right? My business partner out in Sydney, he's a little bit older than me. He's a real... he's a bit of a mentor to myself as well. And I look at him and he's at the peak of his physical business career. I mean, he's in the best shape you'll ever see. His business is thriving. He's making all this money. But when he goes home at night, he's taking his kids to soccer. He's cooking his kids dinner. He's reading his daughter bedtime stories. He's painting her nails. And man, it's one thing to be in good shape. It's one thing to be making all this money. But being a good role model for your kids or for the people around you.
But just what you're saying then, that's like the definition of what success is to me. It's like, obviously you have your health on track, you have your wealth on track, and then also your family.
Your family, yeah. And I think, again, I mean, if anybody follows me individually, I post one of my business partners, my best mate, who, again, he was in that circle where, and he's very open about his drug abuse and alcohol abuse and what he did for years. And in the past year, he's lost 30 kilos, and he's got a little daughter who's my goddaughter, Kaya is her name. But the changes that he has made the second that he's had a baby, because his whole mentality is switched. He doesn't drink alcohol, he doesn't use drugs. He's up at 4 a.m. every morning to go to the gym. He comes home and is cooking breakfast for his child. He is the best father you'll ever see. That child is his entire life. And watching this person who 5 years ago, I would have bet you whatever money in the world that he would have been in jail in the next 5 years, right? And that's my best mate. I say this to him all the time, but I would have bet $1 million in the next 5 years, the path he was going down, he was going to be in debt or in jail. No questions about it. And now I look up to this person who, he is the best role model. He's the best person. He takes care of his fiance, takes care of his daughter, takes care of his family. He just bought his mother a new car for Mother's Day. And so my why I do what I do is to be able to give back and to be able to be that role model for other people. To be in a position for people to look up to me, right? But you can't do that when you're drinking every weekend and vendoring and not being the best version of yourself. So it all kind of comes back when you be the best version of yourself, and when you look good, you feel good, when you do good, it gives the ability for other people to look up to you as well. 100%. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. One last question to wrap this all up. So if you could go back to you could take a teleportation device back to sort of where you were when you're at uni, or when you're in that depressed sort of state, or at any point in sort of your journey, is there anything you would sort of, change? And two, what would be the sort of advice you would give yourself when you're in that dark patch or at some point along that journey?
So I think there's a few things. I mean, I'm at a point now where, again, with my business, the growth that we're having, I mean, we're doubling every quarter, right? And the reason that we are doubling is, for us, it's the service that we're giving. I mean, the money that we're bringing in, I'm so fortunate for the way that it is, but it's having that patient-focused interaction, right? It's actually caring about the patients that are coming in. And I think looking back 5 years ago, that wasn't always at the forefront, right? You're hurting when you're starting a business, you want to make that money. And I think that it doesn't happen as quick, but if you genuinely care about the people that are around you, the people that are coming into your business, the money will follow, right? That's the first point, okay? And the second point is, I think the piece of advice, and there was like a meme or a video that was going around, and it's something that resonated with me really, really good. I can't remember who it was that was speaking, but it's a group of older guys sitting around a table. And I think the biggest thing that I want other people to know is that if you're going through a bad time, if you're going through a good time, if things are you're making lots of money and you're barely making ends meet, no matter what it is, the quote is, "This too shall pass." Right? So whether things are absolutely, you're at the bottom of your barrel, you're depressed, you're going through a breakup, the way you're feeling, that'll pass.
Yeah.
Right? If you're making all this money and you're on top of the world and you're killing it, that will pass as well.
Yeah.
Right? So to make sure that you're humbled and you're centered into what's going on around you. Realize when things are good and take a second back, but also realize when they're bad and take a second to look back and go, you know what? This isn't going well at the moment,
Yeah.
but things will get better. This will pass.
Yeah.
But then also when things are going good, know that things aren't going to always be this good. So do what you need to be able to sustain it.
Yeah.
So I think that quote of "this too shall pass."
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing that's resonated with me over the past few years.
Oh, cool.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for jumping
Done.
on, man. I really appreciate it.
No worries, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, bro.